Let's take a closer look at the Porsche 963. Porsche partnered with the experienced Canadian race car manufacturer Multimatic, who was responsible for cars like the Ford GT and Mazda RT24. Porsche decided for a 4.6-liter V8 biturbo engine with a hot V. Now, this engine was originally designed for the Porsche RS Spyder in 2005. It had a displacement of 3.4 liter and the exhausts were on the outside. With 44mm restrictors, it produced 480 horsepower. Porsche then used it 8 years later in the 918 road car and significantly changed it. They increased the capacity to 4.6 liter and turned the heads to have a hot V. Porsche is the only supercar manufacturer to use a rear carbon fiber frame, and instead of routing the exhaust through it, they just released it at the top for the 918. Here, the naturally aspirated engine produced 608 horsepower. So that's already enough for LMDh. Now, 10 years later, Porsche took the engine from the shelf again and turbocharged it for their LMDh prototype. It now produces 610 horsepower. So if the power output with turbos is the same, why did they do that? LMDh is a BOP formula, which means that the regulator sets a certain power curve the manufacturers have to meet, but also shouldn't exceed. Everybody is always talking about it, so I'm going to show it to you. It's the Article 512 of the Technical Regulations. The power curve regulates the power output above 55% of the maximum engine speed. So if your engine revs to 10,000 RPM, this is what your power curve should look like above 5,500 RPM. Below that, it only says it should be lower than 246 kilowatt. So it could also be a straight line at 245.9 kilowatt. But these engines are race engines and no one would use them at low RPMs. It's a very smooth curve and it looks like a naturally aspirated engine. So a non-turbocharged engine like the Cadillac could replicate this curve. You can then see a blue and a red line, which is the upper and lower limit. So manufacturers will try to be as close to the red line as possible without exceeding it. And such fine-tuning can be done simply by controlling your boost pressure. If you have a naturally aspirated engine and cannot quite reach the curve in all areas, you would have to make bigger changes to the valve train, etc. But then compromise other areas of the curve. The next aspect is that the regulators can change the power curves every weekend according to weather conditions. For teams with a turbocharged engine, it's easy to adapt their boost pressure and still be on the red line of the maximum allowed power output for the weekend. Teams with a naturally aspirated engine have to take what they have. So that's the reason most teams turbocharge their engine and also use engines with large capacity, although it might not make sense on paper. For Porsche, this meant that they don't need much boost, since their base engine without turbos can already meet their power target. Additionally, they have the advantage that their base engine already has a hot V. They could theoretically use a single turbo, but that would be too big and needs too much time to spool. So they placed two smaller turbochargers in the V. Since they don't need to work too hard, there is not much intercooling required. Keep that in mind and check out my BMW video to see their huge intercoolers either side of the car. So Porsche designed a beautifully compact intake system with the engine air coming from the roof scoop, flowing through the filter and into the turbochargers. If we now take a closer look, we can see that they packaged a small air-to-air intercooler right in front of them, which is also cooled from the roof scoop. So they created an extremely short turbo system with short primaries, short intake, small and simple air-to-air intercooler, and a short path to the outside intakes. The air-to-air intercooler also avoids the need for an additional cooling circuit and hence additional complexity. To avoid tight bends, Porsche lets the turbo pipes cross over before reaching the intercooler. On the forward side, we can see a pipe either side running around the cylinder heads. The weak spot of this system are the 90-degree silicone hoses to connect to the plenums either side. But that component is easy to reach, and since all hot components are in the center, mechanics can work here during a pit stop. Porsche used heat isolation for their exhaust system. You want as much heat as possible reaching the turbocharger, but behind it you want maximum extraction and cool down. So Porsche could get some more performance here by removing the isolation behind the turbo, but again, power is not an issue for this machine, and this isolation might be there to protect the bodywork. The next thing we should note is that the Porsche engine is a fully stressed engine without the need for additional reinforcements like the other LMDh cars. That keeps the engine bay tidy and, for example, gives them space for an expansion bottle in this position. And that brings us to cooling. And as you can see, the Porsche looks very different compared to Acura, BMW and Cadillac. The sidepod design and cooling layout looks very similar to the successful 919 at first glance. The competitors have the radiators lying at a flat angle in the sidepods, which creates wide and far forward-reaching sidepods, which block the front wing extraction. The Porsche, on the other hand, has large, almost upright standing radiators in a V shape, which allow to cut back the sidepod and allow for much more through flow and extraction at the front. As we said before, engine air and intercooling is done through the roof scoop. So with that out of the way, Porsche positioned a large rectangular water radiator in the left sidepod. We cannot see any connectors to it because, as we can see at the cooling net, it's a U-flow radiator with in and outlet at the bottom. That keeps the connectors close to the center of the car, which increases reliability in case of a crash, and it keeps the center of gravity low. And also with the fact that the radiators are much more inside of the car and the rear wheel protecting the most outboard corner, the Porsche has some reliability advantages over the competition. We can then see the bleeder lines of the cooling system, which confirm that there is only a single radiator in the left sidepod and two in the right sidepod. And remember that the BMW has 3 radiators each side. And by the way, in LMDh, competitors can choose to mix their coolant between water and glycol 50-50 or 95% water and 5% glycol. Water has a higher thermal capacity, so the less glycol you are using, the more cooling performance you have. Next thing to point out is the super slim Multimatic rear suspension, which keeps the resistance for the internal flow low. If they can release engine bay air more easily, they can reduce the cooling exit at the back and radiators work more efficiently. Another significant difference to the competition is the brake cooling, which we can see here. It is smaller than on the other cars, which makes sense as we now have a hybrid system, which contributes to the rear brake performance. Instead of using large intakes in high pressure areas, which other cars then blank more than half, Porsche uses a set of efficient Necker ducts to provide some cooling and to disturb the surrounding airflow as little as possible. And that brings us to aerodynamics. Like we just saw, the Porsche is all about efficiency and gentle air treatment. It has a large front intake with huge front wing flaps. The first accident of a Porsche can help us here to see exactly what's underneath the cover. And here we can also see that Porsche uses a different design for their brake ducts. They use a large front wing diffuser channel to guide air to the inner side of the front wheel and catch it with Formula 1 style brake ducts. Like we said before, Porsche pushed the sidepods far back to open a huge gap for air to flow out of the front axle area. This also creates a lot of outwash, which keeps the front wheel wake away from the rear wing and diffuser. We can see it working here. Porsche then uses side gurneys, just like on the 919, to use this outwash to create more downforce. The good thing about this is that this downforce is produced in the middle of the wheelbase, so it doesn't affect the aero balance too much. We talked about the double roof fins in my previous Porsche videos, so check them out for more information on that. The smooth and tidy Porsche design continues at the back. We see a very tidy engine bay exit and a rear opening at the lower limit of the regulations. Additionally, Porsche cut large holes into the sidewalls to use the underpressure behind the rear wheels to extract more air from the engine bay and to increase cooling performance, while increasing efficiency at the same time. A trick Audi and Porsche used in LMP1 to fully close the rear bodywork. And if we look at the diffuser, we can see that Porsche uses 2 short strakes to make sure the tire squirt stays outboard. So although we have a very tight set of rules for LMDh, Porsche created a race car which is so different, clean and efficient compared to the competition, and it will be exciting to see how it performs. How do you like the new Porsche 963? Let me know in the comments below and check out my online courses about top-edge car design and consider to become a B-Sport Club member for more videos like this. See you at the next video.